said. We'll go to the next one, Marvin Brown. Marvin, I think I saw you back there.
Yeah. So Marvin Brown, 415 East 11th Avenue, Munhall, and I'm just here for this is the second or third time.
Third time.
Okay, it's just, I think everybody remember what I had talked about.
Well, just to reiterate, you came about your trash bill, it was billed in someone else's name of the property you own, you didn't open their mail, then you get a letter that says you owe penalties, interest, and if you don't pay.
3 years later.
3 years later. I did promise to follow up for you. I did follow up with our solicitor, and I'll let him answer the question.
Yeah, legally, there's no way we can make an exception. Unfortunately, a mistake such as that is not an excuse. The bill is still owed, and we can't treat people differently. We get these requests on a regular basis, not only in here and all the municipalities that I
You
represent.
can't do it on the person, just case by case.
It has to be the same for everybody.
Well,
And we can't excuse penalties and interest. If we did it for you, then we'd have to do it for everybody, regardless of the reason. And that's why the law doesn't allow, everyone has to be treated the same.
Well, isn't that, there should be a way that could be better done, because you're not gonna ever, not have this problem. There was a lady, my wife was just talking to a lady who lived down the street, and she said that, she don't know why, you guys are doing it like this here. And she feels there should be a better way also. It's got to be prevalent around here.
Well, I don't think it's prevalent here, but we have seen it from time to time.
It can be fixed.
And we are
Can be
looking
rectified.
into
That
fixing
could
that.
be worked on.
I met with legal tax service, got a code enforcement officer involved, and we're gonna try to, it's more so for landlords. We had a lot of landlords that weren't finding out about trash bills until it was time to lien the property. And that was because they didn't necessarily know that they were landlord owned. Now, your situation is different because you're a homeowner, you live there, but we have met with legal tax to try to tighten that up so that happens less and less. All right, thanks for coming in. Brian Hinkle. I had to see Brian out there. I guess he's not here. With that, we'll move to public comments on agenda items only. Anyone want?
My name's Rick Corn.
Mr. Corliss, would you come to the podium, please, sir?
I want to know, my name's Ray Cornish and I live in Munhall. I want to know why Mr. Rodriguez is getting a 50-cent raise increase when I thought that they were the union and everybody got the same raise at the same time.
That action was taken in the settlement of agreements, which I don't think we have to go into.
Well, that was, there was a grievance filed by the union, so the union is part of this process. And there was a dispute about the interpretation of the contract and whether or not this gentleman was entitled to this pay. And that was something that was resolved through this process, through this grievance process, which is a private process, you understand that. It's not something that's done in public. And that was the resolution that we came to, was determined that he was entitled to this pay according to the terms of the collective bargaining agreement, and that's why council's approving it.
So in other words, what you're telling me is that he could, another guy back there could come in and get a 50-cent raise too?
I don't think so.
Are you individually with the contract, or are you with the whole union contract?
Well, the contract applies to the entire bargaining unit, means all employees. So this grievance that he filed applies only to him, in my opinion. I don't think it applies to anyone else. If it did, then the union as a whole would ask for it for others as well. We only asked for it for him based on the agreement, interpretation of the agreement, past practice, and all those things were considered. Determination was made that his complaint was correct, and the agreement did entitle him and only him to that increase.
I never heard of a union contract just giving it to one person. Never in my life have I heard that. I mean, I don't know which ends are trying to pull off, but something ain't right.
Well,
I still got some time left.
Thank you, Mr. Quandas. Always appreciate you being here, being a public service. Anyone else? Yes. Come on up. Yes, come on down.
All I want to know is if you could give us.
What's your name and address?
I just gave a tour. All I want to know
She gave you your time.
are the
You
qualifications
can have my
for
time.
our new borough manager, please.
Yes, we will discuss that.
Now or later?
We can do it right now.
Oh, okay.
It's a great question, given our recent past. We embarked on a search that actually Tim Little, the interim manager, helped us start. Tim Little is somewhat of a student of government. He moved on and went to Monroeville. He asked us to recruit the help of the state. The state has people that, Mike Foreman, that works for community development. He came in, we put together an ad. We wanted somebody with a lot of experience, not a little bit of experience, but a lot of experience that's versed in all facets of government, as a hands-on manager, not an administrator. The process started in November. It was a blind resume process. A matrix was built with all the candidates so that nobody knew who the candidates were. All we knew was what their qualifications were. And once the matrix was built, we got together, a committee was formed to find someone. I think there were 4 of us on the committee, or 3 of us, plus Tim. By qualification, we picked the best 5. They all came in for interviews. As a result of those interviews in January, we brought 2 candidates back. Both of them were very well qualified, and we settled on Mr. Callan, and we'll be voting on that very shortly. But his resume is extensive. He's managed a COG for about 10 years right here in the Steel Valley. I won't say how many years ago that was. He's been a borough manager. He's worked in public affairs with Duquesne Light. He has about 30 years of life experience. So,
He was a borough manager where?
Craft. And in addition to that, worked as a regional coordinator for RDM, working with communities in distressed status under Act 47. So he has a lot of experience working with distressed communities as well. So, 2 questions. Any other comments on agenda items?
Ladies first.
Thank you.
Ms. Gresham?
I don't see on here approval of minutes from previous meetings. Are we not doing that anymore?
They're finished, they just, council didn't have enough, I finished them over the weekend.
Okay.
Council wasn't have enough time to review them.
To review, but we still have to go from what, December, January, February?
Yeah, February is done, Missy finished, or, actually finished for February, just today, actually.
Okay, but we still haven't approved December's yet?
No, that'll be
What
next
about
time.
November?
Yeah, they've been approved,
They've
but
been
those are
approved?
online.
Okay. So we're looking for that for next month?
Yep, definitely.
Thank you. Under the payment of bills, got a question, is payment to the library, is that gonna be within now, or is that gonna be done later in the year? Because of our tax situation, our financial situation?
It'll probably be after July.
After
Typically,
July.
we take the donation late in the year, about October.
Okay, is it gonna be a one lump sum?
I would think so.
Okay. Maybe they'd be willing to take it in payments, if we couldn't give it to them as a one lump sum. But that's just a thought. Motion 2, the position for the manager. Is that 700,000?
Yeah, they put the comment on.
No, I promise you the right place.
So that's a typo.
He was pretty excited, I gotta tell you.
I don't remember this.
Is he gonna have to move into the borough after a year?
No, we passed the new ordinance in
When did we pass that ordinance?
I think it was in December.
December.
I don't know, because the old ordinance did say that he would have to become a resident of the borough after a year. And you would think, I know, well, you changed it, but I would think with him working in the borough, he would like to live in the borough.
Well,
He
we
would,
changed it, we can if we want,
but he could if he wanted.
but we won't keep, doesn't have to.
Okay.
You might want to be your neighbor.
He could wanna be my neighbor. Is he my neighbor? Okay, so you said he's Crafton was one of the municipalities that he did.
That's where he's
manage.
at right now.
Okay. I think that's it then. Oh, where do we stand on the audit?
They're coming in tomorrow to start.
They're coming in tomorrow to start.
Well,
Evaluate.
they evaluate everything to submit a proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Davis, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, Mr. Lloyd, thank you very much. I can be loud for you.
Oh, make him walk up, the rest of us.
I can walk up.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, Brian. Oh, part of the new protocol. Name and address.
Didn't want to inconvenience anybody. Brian Davis, and I live at Union Street in Munhall. And the questions I had are tonight's agenda items, and also, I'll just read them all to you. There are about 4 or 5 questions, and some are concerning to past agenda items that have not been finalized, that are in the minutes, and haven't been approved yet. So I'll just read them, and then you can pick and choose and answer whatever ones you want. If you don't want to answer them, don't. If you want to answer one or all, it's up to you. Question 1, did Assistant Chief Joe Sbola, at the time was acting chief, he was investigating the handicap parking signs throughout the borough. Some are old and some are new. And he was going to find out about which ones should be there, are valid, and which ones that are just been there, grandfathered in, and which ones needed to be addressed, whether or not you guys have addressed that. Also, after your review of the parking problems down in Lower Munhall, streets 9th, 10th, 11th, also 8th, around the library area, what are your results and solutions that you've come up with? Because we had talked about that, but never finalized that, and that was something Joe also was working on. And then a following meeting, Mr. Cannon had brought up the conditions of a few abandoned properties on Eugene Street, and the discussion started that there are lots of abandoned properties, over 300 or so was quoted, that are in blight need of addressing. The topic came up, we discussed possibly offering those up as sheriff sales, contingent on the buyer paying the fee that would be assessed for the sale. And everybody, I think, was in agreement that that was a good suggestion. However, we never went back and ever talked about it again, so I didn't want that to get forgotten about. Also, a few months back, I spoke twice at 2 different meetings regarding Mayor Bodner, and my comments at the time, I read a little soliloquy about his life and his dedication and service to this borough and also to our country, and we discussed honoring him in some kind of way, forming a committee, and possibly renaming a park in his honor, or a street, or something, maybe one near the library. However, that started, we began a vote. Mr. False in that meeting, he brought it, he motioned it. It was also seconded. It was then at the time, President Joe Vallis discontinued the vote at that time, said now's not the time for that. So it got pushed under the rug and hasn't been discussed since. So wanted to know what the status on forming a committee to evaluate our opportunity to honor such a great man. Basically, that was all my questions that I had, and thank you again for letting me speak.
All right, Frank, thanks for bringing that up. A lot of issues there. They weren't on the agenda So we kinda gave you some leeway this.
Well, they were on past agendas.
But, yeah, well, that's a stretch.
All right. Sorry.
I don't know the answer. The first one had to do with
Right,
handicap.
I can answer that. We sent letters out to everyone that we had an address for with a handicap sign. We sent a series of 2 letters out. Those who did not respond after the second letter, we let Mr. Bicey know. They went and removed quite a few signs. Off the top of my head, I couldn't give you a number, but it was a good bit. Some people said they didn't get the letters, they reapplied. After the sign was gone, they just didn't, whatever. Yes, it has been addressed. Hopefully it's freed up some parking in the borough. And we're gonna keep a very close tab on that from here on out.
Don't forget the ones on Maryland.
I talked to the same person you talked to.
Yeah,
I will be talking to Mr. Bicey next week.
thank you.
Briefly, Brian, in answer to some of these questions, you could probably see me after or call me at work.
That'd be great.
Answers to some of them. Parking problems, that's now gonna have to be expanded, but actually, there was one parking study that was done codifying all the ordinances for 8th and 9th Avenue. A proposal was drafted. It was never enacted. We can revisit that. But now there are some things changing potentially down where the old Steel Town Ford building is, as well as with the new sandwich shop, so that may have to be looked at again for some changes. But there is something that's out there to look at that council's all seen a few years ago. As far as abandoned property on Ravine Street, there have been several meetings that have taken place. We're taking a very aggressive posture towards vacant property, to returning what properties can be turned back onto the tax rolls. One meeting did take place, but there were a lot of different things going on in Munhall. We will be probably expanding a committee that's going to work with that. I've been in touch with Dave. I've met with Legal Tax Service about these same issues with blight and tax delinquent property. Mr. Brennan's been involved, so there's a lot going on that front. So,
And I know you, the COG is involved, and she had mentioned that tonight when she did her address about the research they've been doing on the blight and stuff in our community. And I wondered if she may possibly get involved with that committee as well.
well, actually, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's something that I talked to Ann a couple of years ago about starting the blight thing, and she did it and ran with it, and it continues to go forward. And then as far as Bodner Park, not necessarily an old park. I think we should find a new park, and we can talk about that.
That would be great.
Form a committee, because we haven't done that, but we need to do it. So with that, I'd like to move into reports from public officials, the Mayor Bodner himself.